All right. Good morning, everybody. It's Michael Parrish, the Senior Vice President of Client Development here at Halo Therapy Solutions. That amazing human that's waving at you is Vincenza Ranallo. I get to call her Enza, which is a cool name. And I'm excited about this episode today. Up to this point, we've had leaders and visionaries from the fitness worlds to wellness to gym owners. And one of the things I was excited about is having a conversation about what takes place within the body and how nutrition, supplementation plays a vital and essential role with our overall health, our capability, our performance. And so I'm very excited. We have Vincenza Ranallo. She's a board certified sports and wellness dietitian. Her career has spanned elite programs at Stanford University, the University of Virginia. She's guided hundreds of athletes and individuals through performance nutrition, holistic wellness, preventative strategies to help them unlock higher levels of energy, resilience, and longevity. And that's amazing because that's what I'm all about. Vincenza, it's so nice to have you on today's episode of Inside the Wellness Mind. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to dive in today's conversation.
Yeah, and your excitement is contagious. The other day when we were trying to nail down the day, and I was thinking that when I said, okay, here's our date, we can do it September 25th, and this is just a week ago, or we could, when we finally caught up to each other, or we could do it, and I was thinking, well, she's probably not going to do the 25th because that's so soon, and I'll give two other dates, and you go, and when you email me back and you go, let's full send this, let's jump on this week. I'm like,
I
yes, that's
did.
exactly how I am. Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
was a full
thank you for
send for
doing that.
me. You're welcome.
Yeah. No, I was
Absolutely.
excited, and I
Yeah,
I
there's
enjoyed our initial conversation.
me as well. And there's a little kind of saying that if it's inevitable, make it immediate. So if you know something's going to happen, make it happen, right? Make sure you're prepared, obviously. But so that was why I was full sending it on this one.
Okay. Well, good. All right. Well, the good news is this is being recorded. There's going to be a transcript, so that we could end that right there, and that's fantastic. If it's inevitable, make it immediate. I love that. All right. Can I borrow that?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
All right. I'll
I
give you the
actually
credit, and you can give someone else the credit.
Yeah, it actually came from one of the first coaches that I worked with, second coach actually, Coach Bronco Mendenhall. It was one of
Okay.
the things that he used to say in team meeting. He used to say it in staff meeting, and so I just kind of took it with me, and I love it. I apply it every day.
Okay. So hold on a second here. You've got this amazing name, Vincenza Ranallo, and literally you had a coach, Bronco Mendenhall. How the
That's
heck are
correct.
these folks with all these great names coalescing and coming together?
Yeah,
That's
we
pretty cool.
attract each other.
Yeah, yeah. Bronco Mendenhall. That's an awesome name, as well as yours. So if I
Thank
met
you.
if I might toggle between Vincenza and Enza. So
Go
that's
for
fine.
it.
So because I know you told me your mom prefers Vincenza. So mom, if you do happen to see this, I know that her name is Vincenza, but I might say Enza. So all right. So super excited about this because inside the wellness mind it belies conversations about wellness, and as of late we've had wellness, fitness, visionaries, leaders, and experts on, but we would be remiss and we would be falling significantly short if we didn't get into the importance of nutrition, especially nutrition relating to how it can increase performance and sustain us and optimize us. So, when you and I talked the other day, nutrition was one aspect, but there were some other aspects. But I want to definitely dive into how the importance of nutrition, because I'll say this: I know a lot about fitness, decades of fitness. Fitness is, I've said before, it's literally saved my life when I was a SWAT guy, when I was a narcotics guy, and it saved my life in the military. So fitness is high levels of capability. That's something I'm passionate about, knowledgeable about. Wellness meaning wellness modalities, red light therapy, halo therapy, cryotherapy, and all the other therapies. No, that's my area of expertise as well. But I got to admit, and I think most people would admit. And by the way, there's peptide um, therapy out there now, and there's hormone replacement therapy, and we're all excited about diagnostics as well. We should be.
Hmm.
But what we don't hear a lot about, as often as we need to, is a nice coherent breakdown of how to optimize our performance and capabilities with the right nutrition. So, can you tell me first? I want to understand what a board certified sports nutritionist is and why that's such an important role in today's day and age.
I love this. So, a registered dietitian is very different than what people refer to as a nutritionist.
Got it.
Essentially, yeah, essentially anyone could be a nutritionist. So, a nutrition coach, they could be a nutritionist. Someone who gets a 10-week certification in nutrition could be a nutritionist. Someone who has no background or education in nutrition could be a nutritionist. So, it's really important that if you're
So I
going,
could.
you could be a nutritionist. Yeah.
Great.
Welcome, Michael, today, our
Yeah.
nutritionist here.
Awesome.
Exactly. So when you are looking for specialties in nutrition, you're looking for a registered dietitian. And this means they've done their undergrad in some kind of science background, chemistry, biology, nutritional sciences, and wellness. They've done a master's also in nutrition, wellness, with a deep dive in metabolism, biology, chemistry. They've put in clinical hours and other hours to take a board certified exam to become a registered dietitian. Most often, registered dietitians work in the field professionally for multiple years, about 2 years, and they receive additional credentialing. So you see that CSSD at the end of my name. That means I'm a certified specialist in sports dietetics. But there are other specialties as a registered dietitian. So we have a lot of background and understanding, education, as well as training in nutrition and dietetics.
Awesome. So those other initials on the back of your name. So CSSD, one more time. That's
Certified specialist in sports dietetics. So I am a
awesome.
sports and performance dietitian. That is my specialty.
Okay, great. And then you've got at least two other designations on that name. And what do those designations mean? This is, by the way, these might be minor details, but I got to tell you, either I'm a super geek relating to loving nutrition and fitness and wellness, but just even your designations fire me up. And what are those designations? Why are they important?
Yes, so I have my master's in nutrition and wellness. As I
Okay,
stated, most dietitians now have their master's. It's a requirement by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And then that RD is registered dietitian, where I had to take a board certified exam to pass and become a registered dietitian.
awesome. And as of late, as I've begun to connect with more and more sports dietitians, because I use the word
There you
nutrition,
go.
you set me straight. I'd give you a high five if you were here. I've seen that it seems to me every NFL, NBA, MLB, I mean professional sports organization, collegiate athletes. I would assume. I think you mentioned you when we weren't on this episode, you mentioned some Olympic athlete work you've done. Is the sports dietitian now a mainstay, an important part of an athletic program?
Absolutely. Yes. I rarely see the hiring of someone who actually I don't think I see it at all.
Mm-hmm.
They have their masters, they are a registered dietitian, and then like I said, once you have that 2 years of additional sports experience, you can take the last credential here that I have, the certified specialist in sports dietetics. So I think you need something around over 1,000 or 1,200 hours in sports nutrition experience after you're a registered
Okay, that's good.
dietitian.
So this has been an evolution though over many years. So for example, I stepped foot onto the quarter deck, is what we called it in the military, in 1991 of the Naval Special Warfare Center. And this was when I was getting ready to go through basic underwater demolition SEAL training. So again, this is 1991. So this is 34 years ago. And and so when we got into that training, I mean, you're talking about operating sun up to sundown. Basically, you would get up around 4 a.m. You wouldn't go to bed till sometimes 9, 10 o'clock at night, running miles and miles and miles. IBS boats, which are inflatable boat smalls. I don't know why they call it small because it always felt big, large, and heavy. Log PT, ocean swims, Hell Week, all that. But our approach and their approach then was, hey, just eat as much as you can. It didn't really matter what it was. They're just like, hey, just eat as much as you can because you're going to burn a lot of calories.
Right.
That's different. And I think athletes back then, I'm pretty sure, weren't really dialed in with their dietary needs the way that they are now. When did we really start to lock in on bringing experts in like yourself to help men and women achieve higher levels of performance? When did that really start to, maybe it has been 35 years, I don't think so, but when did that really start to catch momentum?
Yeah, the ASPDA, so the Academy of Sports Dietitian, no, sorry, American Sports Dietetics Association, right? It's where
Mhm.
all the sports dietitians come together. That was created, I want to say 20 to 25 years ago. So
Okay.
with the push of sports dietetics came that organization. And obviously, it was a primary part of the Academy and Nutrition and Dietetics prior to that, but there wasn't as big of an emphasis on sports performance. So I would say probably in the past 20 years is when we've
Okay.
really seen this change and narrative. And yes, strength and conditioning is important, but we're missing a key component of nutrition and taking a holistic approach to wellness and performance in an athletic or elite athlete setting in your case.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for calling me an elite athlete. Um,
No, I mean, certainly military
I'm
operations
just kidding, by the way.
absolutely are.
For those of you that don't know my sense of humor, that think I was being haughty, I'm being silly. I, yeah. Anyway, I've had moments of elite athleticism, uh, but just so you know, I don't lead with, "Hi, my name is Michael Parrish. I'm an elite athlete."
You
Um,
should. You should.
yeah, but yeah, we'll see how those conversations would go. I think I heard someone say one time, I'd rather see an example than hear an example. So I won't talk
Mhm.
about it. I'll just, as they say, be about it.
Love that.
So part of being about it is now unpacking this dietary and this dietitian aspect of it. So okay, all right, we'll get into some elite athletes in a second. I want to pull this back into the mindset of somebody who is not an elite athlete, but people now are increasingly writ large across this country and around this world are committing to a life of fitness and wellness and recovery, rejuvenation, anti-aging. Let's approach this from the standpoint of average Jane, average Joe, who is starting to layer in fitness, aesthetics, wellness. How important is dialing in their dietary nutrition and supplementation to achieve, let's say, optimization in each of these areas? Let's start unpacking that a little bit. Is this just an elite athlete thing, or is this also important for someone who has no hopes or even aspirations to be an elite athlete?
I think it is a huge proponent of wellness, nutrition. However, it is not the only proponent that
Mm-hmm.
affects someone's overall wellness. When I'm working with clients, sometimes we don't even get into nutrition until 3, 4 sessions in
Okay.
because their fundamentals are so unprioritized. So typically what I approach with most of my clients, I talk about the pillars of health. So this includes sleep, hydration, nutrition, mental wellness, physical wellness, and movement. And going into the details of these, I usually prioritize sleep and health before I even, or sleep and hydration before I even get into the basics of nutrition because sleep and hydration influence an individual so tremendously.
All right, I want to unpack each of those because
Let's do it.
this is really cool. Okay, and let's start at number one. So we're saying essential, of course, and these are all essential, but sleep.
Yes.
There's articles, there's theories, there's personal experience. Let's start delving into the evidences and if it's available, any sort of the clinical approaches to proper sleep.
Yes, I
What
love this.
yeah, how how long should someone be sleeping? I know it's different, I imagine, but how long should someone be sleeping? And then you're mentioning quality of sleep, and then the
Hmm.
time that you would sleep.
Hmm.
Enlighten me on not just hey we should get sleep, but how should we be sleeping?
Right. Really important to know that any recommendations that I'm giving are all scientific, research based answers. I'm not
Okay.
just pulling something out of thin air, right? That is one of the strategies and tactics of being a registered dietitian is giving that research and evidence based answers. So when it comes to sleep, if I had a client that came in, they would say, okay, I'm sleeping for 6 hours a night. And we would talk about how getting 8 hours and working on ways to increase your sleep quantity would help better regulate their hormones, right? If it's a younger male, maybe that helps improve their testosterone levels, their growth hormone. If it's an older woman, maybe that
I'm gonna write
helps.
that down.
Yeah, write it down. Yep, that's the
What
number
about if
one
you're a
thing that
slightly
helps
older male?
testosterone. Say that
You're a
again.
slightly older male. Is that good too?
Honestly, any male, you want to improve your
Okay.
testosterone, get that 8 hours of sleep. Sometimes it's more for elite athletes or
Hmm.
really intense athletes. Another thing that we're looking at when it comes to sleep is how can we improve the quality of it? Are you waking up a lot in the middle of the night because you're hydrating really well, but you're going to the bathroom a lot in the middle of the night? Okay, how do we reduce you getting up in the middle of the night? You're a restless sleeper. We can look into supplementation. Or what did you do before bed that's making you get up in the middle of the night? Oh, you eat really spicy foods before bedtime. That can help you not fall asleep or stay asleep because your body's digesting it. Also, having a really large meal before bed, that could affect sleep quality. You took a nap before bed, that's going to affect your sleep quantity and quality as well. There's so many factors that we have to go through and say, hey, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And there's a really long checklist. So I can
Okay.
certainly get into more of those details if we're looking to improve everyone's overall sleep quality and quantity.
So on that checklist, are does phone use
Yes.
come in as a question?
LED lights, fluorescent lights, blue lights. That is the recommendation, I believe, by the National Sleep Foundation is like 30 minutes prior to bed. It could be an hour prior to bed. I tell people if you can dim all your lights in your house, turn off all your LED fluorescent lights, get off that blue light 2 hours prior to bed, or even as the sun is setting, that's what I would absolutely recommend. We're really trying to get that circadian rhythm down
Yes.
and be in tune with our body. And that comes with reducing all of those lights.
So do you? This is all fascinating. I mean, it really is, because our sleep quality changes, or at least experiences some volatility as we move through our life, based on
Correct.
a lot of factors, age, stress,
Right.
obligations. But this is all fascinating. All fascinating. So with that in mind, do you think, Enza, do you think it's because we're habitual. It's that phone calls our name. So thinking of that, if we say, hey, an hour before we go to bed, and we start to see that that helps us, but what if we're in thought at night and we're thinking, oh, ooh, there was this thing I wanted to research. Do you recommend guarding against getting back on that phone at all costs?
Yes, I do. And a lot of people don't like to hear this, but the number one recommendation I'm making as a dietitian for sleep health is come up with a really good sleep habit before bed. That means, you know, getting off of your phone. If your mind is running a million miles an hour, write down all the things on your mind. Have a notepad by your bed. Okay, here's my checklist for tomorrow. Here's all the work things I need to get done. So then you can improve your sleep quality, right? Also, the things that you want to research, you can write it down. You can do that tomorrow, right? Then,
Yes.
as you're sleeping, you're going to be able to relax more. We talk about breathing techniques before bed, guided meditations, ways to get your stress and cortisol levels down at the end of the day. That's really important to do reflection and mindfulness to get your body ready to sleep. And then you're developing these sleep habits that you're implementing every night, and your body's going to start naturally feeling tired when it should. And you're able to get those 8 hours of quality sleep feel like you're waking up at the same time every morning, if possible, and certainly getting your body in a rhythm where your hormones can function how they actually need to.
So generally, 8 hours is a magic number.
8 hours is the general recommendation. I've seen, 7 to 9.
Mhm.
There's been research studies that come out that elite athletes need up to 10. You're talking like collegiate and Olympians, like
Yeah.
most of them are, 18 to 24-year olds. Those individuals they're in school, right? They're working. 10 hours is sometimes unrealistic. And that's where we implement naps 8 hours
Yeah.
prior to bedtime. So you don't want to take a nap 8 hours prior to bedtime. You don't want to
Okay.
consume caffeine 8 hours prior to bedtime to help fall asleep. But we do take some strategies to figure out, okay, if you can't get your 10 hours and you're really still fatigued and you're not recovering well enough, where can we implement a nap? And that might be really helpful in your recovery.
Yeah, and speaking of recovery, I mean, we talk about recovery, but yeah, you can see how sleep. It's the. Would you say that sleep is the number one recovery tool and modality?
It certainly is
Sleep.
up there. Certainly, you need to be eating the right, appropriate amount of calories.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, you could be eating the perfect amount of calories. Physically, your body is getting the energy it needs. But if you're not sleeping, your hormones are all out of whack. That's putting you at risk for injury, lack of recovery. Your body's not able to wash out all the toxins that it needs to, right? The hormones are off. So sleep is huge.
So with that in mind, so thinking along the lines of sleep. So now my mind, what surfaces in my head is okay, sleep supplementation. So you hear all kinds of things. Um, if someone wants to maintain muscle or let's say grow muscle, you've always heard, hey, before you go to sleep, you should be taking protein just before you go to sleep. Some supplementation there. Are there, if that is that true? And then if that's true, are there other supplements that you could take that, when coupled with sleep, have a very big benefit?
Absolutely. I am a food first dietitian, meaning I want you to eat
Okay.
whole foods,
Yep.
single ingredient whole foods. So when I say single ingredient, we look at an apple. What's the ingredient list in an apple? It's an apple. So I am a whole foods,
Yeah.
food first dietitian. Supplementation is to do exactly that, supplement and fill in the gaps of what you might be missing in a well balanced diet. It's really important for me to emphasize that you can get everything you need through a well balanced diet. You need to be super intentional, very locked in, but absolutely able to do that. Now, for those individuals that might want a little extra supplementation with to improve their sleep, what could we look at? Well, there's a couple different things. The first is there's some great research about tart cherry juice because there's naturally occurring melatonin in tart cherry juice. So you might buy it at the store, you might take 4 to 6 ounces before bed, 30 minutes before bed, and the tart cherry juice is going to help naturally get that melatonin occurring, right? And help you fall and stay asleep. So tart cherry juice is a great food source that you could implement. You also might look at magnesium supplementation. There's great evidence research on certain magnesium supplementations like magnesium glycinates or threonates, and that can help relax the body and the mind and get you sleeping a little bit better and increasing your sleep quality. I would certainly make sure that you're cross-referencing this with your primary care physician as well as a registered dietitian to making sure you're getting the right dosage of magnesium. So yeah, those are great supplements right there that might certainly help.
Are there, so speaking of a whole food approach, are what whole foods are great sources of magnesium?
Magnesium, yeah. So you're looking at nuts and seeds, red meats, beef, right? Might be a great option.
Mhm.
There's also traces of magnesium in dairy products as well as fruits or vegetables. So you can get magnesium from a lot of different foods. It's really abundant. All the vitamins
Yeah.
and minerals are very abundant in your whole single ingredient foods. So look
Okay.
for more of those in your diets.
Yeah, I love it. As I was thinking through this, I was thinking, man, I know Enza's going to be definitely pointing us back in the direction of whole foods because you hear a lot about supplementation,
Hmm.
but supplementation means, like you said, you're having to supplement what you're not getting through whole foods. So what if you could actually get majority of what you need through whole foods and then minimize some
Correct.
supplementation, relatively speaking? So, all right. So we said sleep, and then we talked hydration.
Yes, I
Those are the
love
first two
hydration.
on the list. Yeah.
Those are the first two on the list. Hydration is having an individual calculate their hydration needs out. So if no one has ever told you this, to calculate your hydration needs, you need half your body weight in ounces of water. Now, if you live at altitude or you have a very intense job where you're sweating a lot or you're an athlete, those hydration needs change slightly. But if you are a 200-pound individual, you need 100 ounces of water throughout your day with no physical activity outside of your sweating job or your sweating workout.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So then you should be, assuming that that's what you need, that's kind of taking sporadic and intermittent drinks of water, sipping on it throughout the day. But no matter what's a good approach to that, man? Okay, so someone like me, I'm 185. I'm gonna need 92 and a half ounces of water a day.
About. Yep.
So
And
that's
that's
roughly 10 glasses of water.
correct. What I am always recommending is if you do not have a water bottle with you, you're not setting yourself up for success, right? You're not prepared. So I'm always recommending that a client has a water bottle. And I love that there's been this push with the younger generation to have like these fun water bottles with you at all
Mm-hmm.
times. It's great
Yes.
because people are staying hydrated. Something to keep in mind is it doesn't have to just be water. It could be other fluids. You want to be
That was
careful.
going to be my question.
Yep. So if you're drinking caffeine regularly, that is considered, it does have a little bit of a diuretic effect, but it is considered hydrating if you're consuming it regularly. Alcohol, not hydrating. So those fluids do not count. But juice, tea, herbal teas, those could go towards your fluid intake throughout the day. I will say be cognizant of how many calories you're drinking through fluids. A lot of individuals are saying, like, oh, I'm drinking a ton of orange juice. Well, you're also getting a lot of calories in through orange juice. There's a lot of sugar in orange juice. Do you need that? If you're an elite athlete, sure, it might be a great way to sneak in additional calories. If you're a very sedentary individual, might not be the best approach. So I would water down that orange juice just so you can get some flavor and fun throughout your day, but also making sure you're not over consuming, sugar calories that you might not need.
Yeah, because it's a good thing you mentioned some flavor and some fun, because you know how we're all are, like, some people just it'll be drudgery in their head if they just think about drinking water, which George Foreman used to call God's juice.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
so so let me ask you this, Enza. So thinking along the lines of getting the fluid intake generally and broadly, no matter whether it's water or otherwise, is it okay to have electrolytes in your water, assuming that you're not getting additional fillers and preservatives, but like a good quality electrolyte tablet or something like that? Is that okay?
Yes. There is
Or
a
can you
little
get too
nuance with
much?
this. If you're going to drink water, I typically do not recommend that you drink a purified water because
Okay.
in your bloodstream, right? If you lose water, through your when you excrete it, you're not just
Mhm.
losing H2O. There's other electrolytes in there. So a spring water is typically what I'm recommending if someone's going to be drinking water, right? So drink a spring water. There's additional minerals in there in that water. Spring water is going to be appropriate for most individuals. Now, when do we incorporate electrolytes? This might be for someone who's working out aggressively or has a
Mhm.
really high intensity job outside in the sun where they're sweating a lot. So, in your sweat, you're not just losing H2O, you're losing electrolytes, sodium, magnesium, calcium, potassium. You're losing that through your sweat. So, the electrolytes will help replace that. Now, if you're doing an hour workout, 2-hour workouts, awesome, great opportunity to refuel and rehydrate with electrolytes. So that would be appropriate then. Once again, this is at the discretion of a dietitian. I would make sure that you're intentional and you have an understanding of why you're consuming those electrolytes. If you're just consuming it just to consume it, might need to be reevaluated by a professional.
So if someone is saying, "Hey, I'm going to go on a 5K run with my running group. I'm going to go to the store and get some Pedialyte and drink that down or have that in addition to my water. Good thing, bad thing?
Yes, that would certainly be appropriate. You're engaging in a physical activity where you're sweating for an extended period of time. You know you're not losing just water in your sweat, and you're replenishing with a Pedialyte. That would be a great option.
All right. So that's endurance related. What if it's like just a bodybuilder who just wants to get the pump on, but it's not really going to be subjecting themselves to the demands that, the arduous swimming, arduous running. Should they be drinking electrolytes?
Really depends on sweat rate, right? How much
Okay.
sweat you're losing, how much sodium you're losing in your sweat. Keep in mind, once again, back to the whole foods, you can get electrolytes through the foods you eat. So in this example,
Okay.
if you're sweating just slightly as a bodybuilder, you can replenish all the sodium, magnesium, calcium that you might be losing through an appropriate diet. So you're having a glass of milk with dinner. That's got sodium and calcium and magnesium in it, right? That is a great source of electrolytes. You're salting your food just a little extra, right? We're cooking a steak for dinner, and what are we going to put on there? We're going to put salt on there, right? So you're replacing the electrolytes that you're losing, and you might not need an additional electrolyte.
Okay. All right. See, this is great. I mean, we're over here just believing every single commercial and saying, well, I want
Exactly.
that because that looks cool.
Yeah.
So, and as we move through this conversation, anytime you like you just did, you can point us back to Whole Foods. I'd
Hmm.
love it. So
Yeah.
because I think sometimes we're pivoting immediately toward some sort of supplement
Hmm.
because there's always this sense that, well, packaging is cool, advertising is cool, marketing is great, but if we can get it through whole food intake, would you say that that's the better approach?
For a more sedentary individual, absolutely. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the approach. For athletes, their needs are slightly different, sometimes tremendously different. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when, the professional recommendation based off of their sweat rates, how much sweat they're losing, how often they're working out, that's when we might implement electrolyte supplementation to help support their higher needs.
Got it. All right. So we tackled sleep, talking about hydration, a couple of nuances there. Let's move on to the next category.
Yeah, so
So,
we could talk about nutrition, but mental wellness is really important.
mm-hmm.
If I speak with someone and they are stressed out of their mind, um, I can tell that I could probably take an educated guess that their cortisol levels are really intense. They have a really busy work life or family life. I am always recommending as a professional that they see a therapist of some sort, or at least putting it out on the table that they have resources and that they have those options to get mental support for whatever they're dealing with in life, to help better manage that, to help better navigate the individuals in their life. And sometimes correlating that with the wellness approach is really helpful because now we're taking a multifunctional approach into getting this individual healthier.
Yes, and
So
it's interesting.
mental well-being.
Mental well-being. It is interesting too, and it makes sense, of course, that the holistic approach to maintaining or advancing mental health and wellness, of course, would have to be sleep. You have to get great sleep,
Mhm.
um, hydration, nutrition. This is where fitness comes in and can make
Mhm.
a significant. How many times have we heard that fitness or a dedication to fitness has helped to pull someone out of the depths of depravity in their mind because they have a
Right.
purpose, and the amount of endorphins
Mhm.
and hormonal benefits that take place with rigorous exercise,
Right.
which I'm sure you could talk about more, much more sophisticatedly than I can. Um, yeah, so let's talk about some of that hormone side. So, why do you think exercise is a recommended part of helping someone maintain mental health?
Yeah, like I said, you're getting all your happy hormones, your serotonin, your
Mm-hmm.
dopamine. Those are those are hormones that are making you feel good, that are making you feel excited and motivated and engaged. and all those are also addicting. Everyone wants that dopamine hit constantly throughout the day. We're looking for a dopamine hit. Where are most Americans getting it? Through social media. We're scrolling and we're getting those
This
dopamine
guy.
hits. Exactly. Why don't we get our dopamine hit from the sun, from sunlight? Why don't we get our dopamine hit from exercise, where we're actually feeling excited and confident because we've gone consistent days in a row, and now we're getting used to that dopamine hit and we're craving it instead of feeling obligated to it. So exercise is a huge push on mental wellness, and I'm always promoting that in that holistic approach to wellness.
It's interesting too regarding dopamine. So a gentleman named Jocko Willink, I don't know if you've heard of Jocko.
Oh, Jocko. I know Jocko well. I've watched a lot of those videos.
Yeah. So what's funny is I was in class 177 when I first got to SEAL training. That happened to be his class. I didn't know him and he didn't know me. I was with them until about week 4, and then I had to wait for the next class to come up. Um, but I didn't realize I was in his Buds class initially, because you all have a shaved head. You have a class up front.
Hmm.
You're shaving your heads. You're painting your helmets green, and but to see what he's done post SEAL teams,
Hmm.
I would argue he's made a bigger impact post SEAL teams than he did even when he was at the teams. But thank you for your sacrifice, Jocko, and Task Unit Bruiser, which is what they were over in Iraq. Um, but he talks about free dopamine and how free dopamine, he describes it as free dopamine, and it's not good. And what he means by that, at least in my understanding of how he's articulated it, is this here creates little tiny dopamine hits and drips without needing to tap into your resiliency and to work for it.
Hmm.
And when you're not working for dopamine and you're getting little dopamine hits, they can create, of course, addiction
Right.
and reliance upon something like that. So the type of dopamine you and I are talking about is, well, dopamine that can come from getting out in the sunlight, dopamine that comes as a result of working hard through some sort of rigorous exercise and protocol. Um, the elite athletes that you work with, they're very familiar with maybe levels of dopamine and serotonin and the feel good hormones that can't you can't even tap into unless you're hitting some of those higher levels of athleticism. You've always heard about runner's high.
Yes.
For those of us that hear about a runner's high, what exactly is a runner's high?
Yeah. So runner's high, obviously, you're like in your, I don't know, it's almost like you're in this like peaceful state. You're in this like
Mm-hmm.
mental thriving state. Yeah, that's when you're having that extra production of that dopamine, of that serotonin, where you're feeling so zoned in, and this is what you were meant to do, right? You're having purpose and it's driven, and that's coming from all the hormones from running for a consistent period of time. So they're getting that runner's high, and they're chasing after it, no pun intended, every
Yeah,
time they run.
yeah, you are. I've had that a couple times. It just comes on you out of the blue, but it's after a while. It's after a while of depending on how intense you are, but also the length of time, and your body just all of a sudden has this rush of feel good hormones and endorphins, and it's just hard to describe. But yeah,
Yeah, when I'm
peacefulness.
working with clients that are training for like half a marathons or marathons, for their first one, I typically see them, explain that runner's high. They're like, "I love this. I'm gonna do this forever. I feel so
Yeah,
good." It's like, yeah, that's your runner's high talking for sure, and I love it, and I encourage them to stick with it, as long as they can stay healthy. But yeah, that's usually what I see very aggressively in those first time trainers for the half marathons and the marathons.
yeah, yeah. Especially with endurance athletes in particular.
Hmm.
Speaking of endurance athletes, you've done some work, I believe, with Olympic athletes, even someone like Katie Ledecky. Is that right?
Yeah, I can't speak on the clients that I've worked with, HIPAA, right?
Okay,
But
got
yeah,
it.
you can look at when I was at Stanford and the time that I was
Hmm.
there, I worked with over 17 different teams. So there was a lot of Olympic athletes working there at the time, as well as, athletes that are now in the NFL, MLB, WNBA, very, very prominent names, which are amazing. I was glad to be
Hmm.
a very small part of their journey in helping build their foundation for nutrition and wellness.
Awesome, awesome. So take me through like the a day in the life of someone like an elite athlete or an Olympic athlete with respect to all of these aspects, right? So how much are they tracking and keeping track of and making sure they get great sleep, good hydration, getting the proper nutrition? Are these folks, they're being guided in many respects? How often would you be interacting with them on a dietitian basis? Someone like an Olympic athlete. Is it like periodic check-ins, or is there like pretty frequent contact to make sure that they're dialed in?
Yeah, I will say that the Olympic athletes, they are pretty dialed in. When you're taking the clientele from Stanford, for instance, you're getting a lot of type A individuals who need all their ducks in a row, who want to be so locked in terms of grams of carbohydrates, how much they need to be hydrating, because they have really big goals as very young people, right? These are 18
Yeah.
to 22-year-olds that have these really ambitious goals. So they're very locked in. I will say, with those more ambitious, elite driven athletes, you'll come up with a plan for them, and they are the best kind of clients because they will follow it to a T. There's a fine line between that dedication and obsession, but they
Yeah.
want they want to please, they want to, feel that success and get to their goals. So really cool to work with those athletes. You don't got to motivate them much because they are very motivated to start. So really cool opportunity with those individuals.
That's where that self motivation comes in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. They're
Yeah, it's
driven.
been my yeah, it's been my experience too, being somebody who, was a very effective kickboxer as an amateur, and then being in SEAL training. You're right. What happens, I'm looking back, you didn't have to tell us much because we were always in the mindset of, hey, if there's any possible thing that I could do to move my performance level further down the continuum of attaining greater optimization, greater capability, whatever that is, and however minute that enhancement or benefit is, I want to try to grab it. So
Absolutely. It's really cool to see that. Fortunate for those individuals, amazing. They will listen to any recommendation I give them. I will say, for your average person, it takes a little bit more motivating, a little bit more education, a little bit more push and affirmations for them, for my everyday supermen and women, working with them. Like I said, it's a little bit more tender, loving care to really get
yeah,
them where they need to be.
do you have people that come to you and go, let's say someone like me came to you and I go, hey, I'm 53, I've been a lifelong this or that. Here's what I'm experiencing. I want to train for. I come to you and I say, hey, I want to train for high rocks, and this is a real scenario, right? So
Mhm,
I say, I want to train for high rocks. I'm doing a lot right, but I'm not dialed in on everything,
mhm.
especially with nutrition.
Yeah.
Um, how would we then go about working together? Someone like me, or if there's someone out there who might listen to this down the road, who says, "Hey, I want to really dial this in. I don't want to just you know walk around suboptimal all the time." How do you begin to work with someone like that?
The first step, besides the sleep and hydration, in terms of nutrition intervention, is one, educating the individual, but also collecting information from the individual. So I will collect their medical history, their personal
Okay.
history. We will do a diet recall and a diet analysis. So I will break down how many fats, proteins, and carbs they're eating throughout the day. We'll figure out, okay, based off of that diet analysis and their performance and health goals, where do we need to make modifications? How do we need to make modifications? So, for instance, let's say you came in and I found out you were not eating a lot of protein, but you needed a lot of protein for recovery and muscle building while you're training. We would talk about, okay, how much protein do you actually need to eat? What does that protein look like? Because I could give someone a recommendation of, oh, you need 150 grams of protein a day. But if they don't know what that looks like in terms of, their meals, if they don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to identify a protein source, what good is that information? So it's really, really important that not only are we educating them on what it is they need to do, but how they do that and what it looks like in their day to day.
Okay. Awesome. Now, if you meet someone who is not a great cook,
Hmm. Know
would you
anyone?
recommend something like factor meals or maybe some other meal service? Because you see a lot of this out there now. And I ask that because I use factor meals and
Hmm.
I want to get your
Yeah,
insight on
that could
that.
be a great alternative. It's really meeting the client where they're at. So if the client, let's say they are in a good financial status and they can afford factor meals, great.
Mm-hmm.
We will talk about factor meals. I have clients that have very ambitious goals, but they only eat out at fast food restaurants. Okay, well, I can't ask them to order factor meals. I can't ask them to cook at home yet. It's always a yet because this is going to be a journey. This is a nutrition marathon. This is not a
Mm-hmm.
nutritional sprint. So if I have the client that's eating out at fast food restaurants a lot, great. Let's make modifications to what they're currently eating. They get a fried chicken sandwich. Could we change that to grilled? They're doing 4 sauces. Could we do 2 sauces? We're making those caloric modifications to help better fit their goals and needs. So it's all about meeting the client where they're at and then going from there and building off of that in our next nutritional sessions.
All right. So hold on a second. Because I lived in San Diego for 4 years. Of course, I was in San Diego for a year, in the early 90s. In and out, In and
I
Out
know.
Burger. And you were at Stanford.
Yep. It's
So you
good.
know In
It's
and
real
Out.
good.
So you can make some modifications. There aren't that many choices there, but
Right.
if someone was an In and Out guru, they could
Mhm.
maybe balance out those meals a little bit.
Right. Absolutely. It's also not just what's in that meal, but what you're
Mm-hmm.
eating. We're looking at the very big picture approach of their entire day. So, for instance, let's say someone needs to get in and out. Okay, are you doing the large fry or are you doing the small fry? Are you getting a soda or can you get a water? Are you doing a double cheeseburger or a single cheeseburger? Okay, so we make modifications based off of that meal. And then we also look at what they're eating throughout the rest of their day. So, if you're going to have in and out, that is a high fat, high carb, highly processed meal. There's not a lot of fiber or vitamins and minerals in that meal. So we need to look where we can get more fiber, where we maybe get a little bit less carbs, maybe a little less fat in the other meals throughout our day. So we're playing kind of detective and we're also aligning the rest of the day to fit in that in and out that you really need to have for dinner or lunch or whatever it is.
All right. So it's fair to say that animal style is not going to be a recommendation.
I love animal style. I will say, like I said, if it is a non negotiable, and I talk to my clients about this very transparently, if this is a non negotiable, we will figure out how to better fit your needs. However, we will also talk about the nutritional breakdown of animal style. There's sugar in there, it is a high fat sauce. If you are looking to reduce your caloric intake and maybe lean out, lose some fat mass, maybe animal style in the future might not be an option for where your nutritional goals are for the next 3 months or for the next 6 months. So maybe we don't do as much animal style, or maybe we do a little bit less. Or we keep it and then we watch our fat intake for the rest of the day and the rest of the week.
The vision I have in my mind is of a lineman who probably just devours. This would be somebody that's in a college out in or a university out in California where there is an In-N-Out Burger, and I could just see linemen because they have to carry a certain weight, just
Right.
going, "Hey, this sounds great, Enza, and I love what you're doing, but I'm gonna go get three,
Totally.
three In-N-Out meals over here," which brings up a question in my mind: what sports or athletes tend to be more dialed in with really tightening up their dietary intake and their nutrition supplementation more so than others are, and maybe it's even position related. I would assume a lineman probably takes a much more cavalier approach, but I could be wrong, than somebody who is on the swimming team.
I will say it's based off of individual, truthfully.
Okay.
So every client is different. I can't say that one sport was more dialed in than others. I
Okay.
will say, in general, cross country athletes and track athletes do love their nutrition. They tend to be pretty, I would say, cognizant and have
Mm-hmm.
nutritional awareness from a young age, and that might be just be a little bit of the culture of the sport, but it definitely is personalized by the individual.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of cross country athletes, it's interesting too, because to me it seems, because obviously when you see a cross country athlete or an elite long distance runner, I know people will, a lot of folks will sit back and say, oh, their physiques or this or that, but that's largely the result of just burning so much, you're just burning so much calorie, and it'd be very difficult to carry any muscle, number one, if you're going to
Right.
try to reach for higher times. But even if you wanted to, in my experience back when I was in SEAL training, and then after that, I mean, I was only at that point walking around at 155 to 160, and it didn't matter what I ate. It didn't matter um, how many weights I lifted. I was only able to carry a certain amount of muscle because of how much demand I was placing on my body.
Absolutely. Yeah. And most athletes, definitely in their postseason or in their preseason, we do recomposition all the time. So
Mm.
recomposition meaning we modify their muscle mass, whether it's increasing it or, decreasing their fat mass, or a combination of both. So recomposition is really common. And our everyday, men and women, they also want body recomposition as well. When I talk to individuals about recomposition, body recomposition, it's really important that you have to have the training as well as the nutrition dialed in. Nutrition is super important, and we will modify your macros, your protein, carb, and fat intake as needed. But if you don't have the appropriate training to get to that recomposition, it's going to be really hard to do. For example, if I had a endurance athlete like a cross country runner and they wanted to put on more muscle mass, but they weren't doing enough strength training and eating
Mm-hmm.
enough protein, it's going to be really hard to get their goals. Or they were running too much, where they're doing that breakdown of their muscle mass. That's going to also be really challenging. So they have to have the appropriate training and the intentional training as well as their nutrition dialed in.
That's awesome. It's just so amazing.
It is. It's so
So
fun.
yeah, it's fun because recomposition, it's interesting. The moment you said that word, I knew exactly what you meant. But funnily enough, again, even being somebody like myself who's had a lifetime commitment to health, wellness, fitness, human performance, never even thought about recomposition. So
Mhm.
that is really cool, but it's so necessary. So recomposition with elite athletes, or let's say professional athletes who are post season,
Mhm.
and they're now, let's say, 3 or 4 months or 5 months away from starting their season again, is that's where that recomposition recovery starts to really become
Yes.
more important?
Yeah, during season or during training, that's really important to maintain what you have in terms of muscle mass and fat mass. But let's say we had a football athlete that is going through season, they might by the end of season have lost, they couldn't, maybe they didn't eat to keep up with their nutritional needs, and they lost a little bit of muscle mass and maybe lost a little bit of fat mass or maybe gained a little fat mass. At the end of the season, we want to, obviously, if we can maintain that, fantastic, because then we have a better baseline for next season. But we can also reevaluate, okay, how do we get back to where you were at the beginning of the season? So that's when we start doing the nutrition interventions, the nutrition educations, meeting with them weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, depending on what their goals are, making sure that they can follow a nutritional template, stay dialed in. Obviously, they're getting all the training they need in the collegiate setting, right? They are getting the training they
Yes.
need. So they really got to lock in their nutrition. And then that's when we see them, get prepared for the next season.
Awesome. And Enza, have you worked with wrestlers before?
I did work with wrestlers, absolutely, yes. And I will say, with meeting weights, I also worked with lightweight rowing. So cutting
Okay.
and meeting their certain weights is a very challenging sport. It is a very challenging sport, but yes, there is a science behind that in terms of helping them cut appropriately and in a healthy way, as well as making sure that they are able to refuel after they hit their weight that they need to weigh in for their competition.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that is because I was thinking in terms of the various athletes you've worked with, but as a former fighter, and as somebody who is a fan of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC, and who knows fighters and every now and then trains around fighters, one of the things that's always been quizzical to me is the need to have somebody who would be walking around at, let's say, 195,
Hmm.
cut down to 170. I know
Hmm.
they're dialing in how they do that, and they have to
Hmm.
be on weight, on target at a certain point. But the reality is they're still going through that exercise 24 hours before, where they're just dehydrating themselves down to that weight.
Absolutely.
What
Yeah.
does that cause you to shriek a little bit, or have we dialed in the rehydration process enough that not a big deal?
No, I mean, I still think that's very yo-yo in terms of
Mm-hmm.
body mass and composition in a short period of time. Obviously, you're hoping that those individuals are monitored by a registered dietitian as well as a medical doctor, because there's such um, uh, a swing of the pendulum of their electrolytes in their body. You don't want that to, cause heart issues, or, you don't want them fainting because their blood sugar levels are too low, because they've essentially depleted all of the glycogen sugar stores in their body. They're extremely dehydrated and they've lost a lot of electrolytes. So what they're losing in that cutting period is water weight and glycogen stores, and they are pretty depleted at that point. Once they weigh in and then they're doing their, refueling, that also needs to be a gradual process. If you refeed too quickly, that could cause, challenges with your heart, or spikes in blood sugar level that might not be appropriate, or too fast. So it's, like I said, it's really important that you're working with medical providers at that point to making sure that you're refueling and rehydrating appropriately at that point in time.
Yeah, I always feel for the fighters, as somebody who has seen that process. Fortunately for me, I was always, as a young kickboxer, I was really close to the weight I was fighting, so I never had to worry about that.
Yeah,
So,
it's great.
yeah. So with that in mind, though, I don't know if I heard this correctly, but recently, when I say recently, I thought I might have heard that wrestling has gotten away from the drastic weight cuts. Is that true or not true?
I'm actually not sure. I would have to certainly look that up.
Okay.
I do, when I was working with wrestling and lightweight rowing, there was a
Mhm.
big push with other medical professionals to get away from weigh-ins prior to competition,
Yeah.
because it could be so detrimental mentally and physically to a young developing athlete who is still growing and maturing. That, is it necessary? That was a huge
Right.
question. Is this absolutely necessary for the sport? And I think a lot of times the answer is no. It's not necessary. It's just been part of the sport for as long as we know the sport. But there's
That's right.
certainly other ways to modify that.
It's been business as usual. And I know where it came from. It was to give, you know, I mean, I walk around at 185, but if I was gonna be a fighter, I'd have to cut. I wouldn't want to fight at 185 because I'd be fighting against somebody that
For
wants to fight
sure.
at 200, who's
For
just cutting
sure.
his weight. By the time he rehydrates and refuels, 24 to 36 hours later, this guy's stepping back in the octagon or the ring at 200, and I'm still 185. So
Right. Right.
so, I don't know. I think, yeah, I'd love to see the day where we could get to that point where we're not going through those aggressive dehydration processes, and just have someone fight close to what they're walking around weight wise.
Agreed.
I think it'd be
Agreed.
healthier.
Absolutely. And that's what I said, developing those habits of dehydrating yourself and underfueling yourself for 24 hours is very detrimental to a young athlete. So if we could certainly get away from that, I would be an advocate for it. Why not?
All right. Well, I'll high five you on that one. I don't
Okay.
know if they need our input or not or want it. I know the fighters are like, be quiet. I want to be 200. And there was a guy who was 20. He was like 210, 215. His name was Anthony Rumble Johnson. He
Mhm.
would cut down to 170 early in his career.
It's
Crazy.
impressive and it's also scary.
Scary at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we've heard about the stories where it hasn't gone so well and people have gotten sick. And
Exactly. And that's exactly what I'm referring to. There's underlying
yeah.
medical conditions where their body is not responding well to this, and it can cause obviously long-term challenges medically.
All right. So I want to pivot back into something real quick as we bring this home here shortly. One of the things that I get into a lot, especially with our company, Halo Therapy Solutions, we have the only 5 sensory breathe and detox sauna. We have the only patented red light therapy and dry salt therapy integration in the world. We've recently advanced that technology, and we've now advanced it, and it's not just for wavelength red light therapy, near infrared light, halo therapy, which increases oxygen exchange, but it's also oxygenation.
Hmm.
And so oxygen is the reactant that the body uses to convert glucose to ATP.
Hmm.
ATP, of course, being the primary currency that our mitochondria use to keep our cells driving and sustained and to keep our cells operating in good order. But that, and these are very important wellness modalities. More, I
Hmm.
view them more like supplementation, if you will,
Hmm.
because every time you and I breathe, we have oxygen going in, CO2 coming out. The reason we need the oxygen is because our cells use that oxygen to ultimately create ATP.
Yep.
It's like it's the electron transport chain.
That's
Oxygen is
right.
that last element, right? So that's a way to help aid in or maintain ATP levels. What foods are critical or essential to making sure that we have ATP levels? If that's a way to maybe even ask the question.
Hmm. No, it's a great question. So ATP, right? Molecular level. So let's go
Mm-hmm.
all the way up to the foods
Yes.
that will help with ATP production. So that brings me back to my macronutrients, my
Awesome.
proteins, my carbs, and my fats. The primary source of energy that our body utilizes is carbohydrates to produce ATP. Carbs, when broken down into the body, turn into sugar. Sugar is utilized to get that ATP, right? So get that
Mm-hmm.
energy. So if we want more ATP production, we got to eat enough carbs to fuel us and sustain us for whatever we do throughout the day. Obviously, we can get energy through protein as well as fats.
Mm-hmm.
However, when we're looking at what the body uses primarily as a source to produce energy, it's carbs. It is carbs,
Awesome.
and
All
it is
right.
appropriate amount of carbs.
And then
So
we'll talk
carbs, like I
about.
can just get into carbs. Carbs are sugar. So any type of plant-based carbs would be like potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, brown rice, peas. We could do carbs through fruit. So any type of fruit. Another type of carb would be more of our simple sugars. So think like candy or juice. Also, maybe breads, muffins, chips. Those are more simplified carbohydrates as well. But I, as a dietitian, am absolutely promoting the complex carbohydrates as well as the fruits to get more fiber as well as sugar in your diet.
And by way of review, and again for the crew that sees this progressively down the road, because that's going to be a lot of people, complex carbs again are list some of those complex carbs.
Yes, the complex carbs are going to have sugar, but they're also going to have more vitamins and minerals
Mm-hmm.
as well as fiber. There's a higher fiber content in those
Okay.
complex carbohydrates.
Awesome.
Okay. Yep.
And in my experience, I feel the need for these carbs
Hmm.
when I'm getting more into that endurance side
Yes.
of my training, which is why you always hear, which is why we were always told in SEAL training, eat as many carbs as you can, gents, because tonight's
Hmm.
gonna suck. That's how we usually
Exactly.
termed it.
Right. Yeah,
And
because you
for
need all of
runners and
that energy.
swimmers and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you
Okay.
need that energy consistently. Not only are you replenishing, but then you need more carbs to recover and to refuel. Think of your muscle and your glycogen stores in your body as a battery. You need to constantly recharge and get that charge, that battery percentage, all the way up to 100% because you're going to deplete it very quickly with a high intensity workout, especially if you're an endurance athlete training multiple times a day or a week.
And that gas in the tank should be put in how far in advance of a, let's say, event or competition. So because there are more people that are going to listen to this who aren't elite athletes, but do run
Right.
5Ks,
Hmm.
run 10Ks, run marathons. how far in advance should they be filling that carbohydrate gas tank?
That's a great question. Ideally, you're doing it every single day, so you don't need a carb load prior to an event. So
Got
every day after you train, you are replenishing enough to feel recovered and, fueled up for your next training session. So ideally, it's every single day. If you're feeling a little low, you can certainly add additional servings or multiple servings of carbohydrates to get that extra boost to feel ready to go for a longer run the next day.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I love it. I'll be heading off to Alaska on Friday, and I won't need as many carbs, but those sled dogs that they're gonna,
They'll need
kind of
it.
touring me around, they're gonna need it. Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever been to
Absolutely.
Alaska. Have you ever been
Absolutely.
to Alaska, Enza?
No, not yet. It's on my bucket list.
I haven't been. So I'm going to Fairbanks, going to a place called Pike's Waterfront Lodge. They're one of our clients. They have a wellness room that we help them create. They have 2 Halo Reds, a Halo sauna. They have salt brick on the wall, loungers, and they're expanding with another 700 square feet. Anyway, they have a whole itinerary for me. I'm going to meet with their team, help them conceptualize their wellness. We're going to go on a sled dog ride. We're going to go on the trails. I'll need those carbs for my trail walk
Exactly.
slash run. Yeah.
Exactly.
Does that also change too if you're going to be in cold water or subjected to cold for so yes, undergoing endurance activity, but within a cold environment, does the need for carbs or other aspects of diet change?
Yes, so temperature and elevation affect obvious the uptake of carbs. It's
Hmm.
used at a higher level, so you might need a little additional carbs to replenish with. I would say more importantly, the type of carb during a workout or a training session is going to be more important. So you want to focus on those complex carbohydrates at your meals, right? So those
Okay.
plant-based carbs at your meals. And then during your endurance workouts or training, that's when you can get more simple carbs. So think fruits or, something that's going to give you quick glucose like pretzels or fruit gummies. It could also be as simple. Yeah, exactly. Everyone loves
Ah,
hearing that they could just get some sugar straight sugar during their
pretzels.
workouts.
Oh man, I started loving pretzels dating back to my days as a narcotics officer. There was a guy named Jerry Hensley, old narcotics detective, old school. For some reason, he frosted his hair, but he just looked like he stepped out of a magazine. And he would somehow get able to get in covert positions, even though he stuck out like a sore thumb. But pretzels after pretzels after pretzels. Um,
Yeah, that's quick fuel right there.
Okay. All right. Well, good because I have a whole bag of pretzels that I've been munching on the last couple of days. Is there some sense to? I've always thought that sometimes you crave certain foods because your body has this unique way. At least my sense is that your body has this unique way of trying to nudge you toward
Hmm.
foods that your body needs for certain aspects of nutrition. Is there some sense of that based on cravings?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're having a craving, it's really important to figure out, why am I having that craving? I tell all my clients, go through your checklist. Okay. I'm having a craving. I really want sweets. Okay, let's talk about it. Did you hydrate today? Have you been up longer? Did you not sleep well last night? Did you eat enough protein? Did you have multiple well balanced meals today? When was the last time you ate? Are your blood sugar levels getting a little bit low? So, all of a sudden, if you're going through your checklist, it's like, wow, you're right. I woke up earlier than normal. Maybe I needed a little extra fuel. Was my meal balanced? No, I actually forgot to eat carbs. I just had for breakfast steak and eggs. Oh my gosh, yeah, my body needs some complex carbohydrates, some fiber. And oh yeah, I ate 6 hours ago. So I am really hungry right now. That's why I'm craving these sweets because I'm going through my checklist and I didn't hit half of them. So really important to really
Yeah.
create that awareness around nutrition is what are we doing and what have we missed out on that we can fill the gaps for reasoning as to why we're getting these cravings.
I love it. And I think it goes without saying that we should probably not go to the grocery store if we haven't eaten in 7 hours.
I do hear that. Yeah, I do some big grocery store carries when I go
Yeah.
hungry. So I always try to go well fueled with a well balanced meal, good portions of protein, feeling really good going in and being like, I'm not sure if I absolutely need that, but I know I'm going to want a sweet treat later. So maybe I won't get a pint of ice cream, but maybe I'll get some chocolate covered raisins. That would be a great little sweet treat. And I only need a couple of them instead of crushing that pint of ice cream later.
Awesome. Yeah. What about chocolate covered almonds?
Yeah, it's a great option as well. Yeah,
Okay.
I like the smaller servings of
Mhm.
things because then you can have one or two, opposed to if you open a bag of cookies, you're just mindlessly eating that and you're crushing them. And don't get me wrong, I love cookies and ice cream more than the next person. But having alternatives is great for creating more balance throughout your day.
Awesome. Well, this is exciting, and this hour flew by faster than any other hour. I mean, there's so much that we could tackle. I want to have you on a future episode, Enza, because
Yeah, I
we
would
have
love
to.
to.
Because yeah, there's so much we can talk about and get into, and you and I'll do what we used to do in SWAT. After this, we'll do an after action review, and we'll think about some areas down the road that when we get you on another episode, we can make sure we cover those aspects as well. So
Yeah, I'm
I just
already
want you to
thinking we
know,
could go into
yeah,
protein, we can go into
yes,
healthy fats, why they're important. Oh yeah, I got it
yeah.
all.
All right, well, good. We're going to get into that on maybe even a second and a third episode, because there's so much that we can cover, and there's so much that I think we need to cover. So I want you to know that it's been a thrill to have you on the show today, and there's so much good stuff. I can't wait to see the transcript and pull out a lot of these gems of insight and wisdom that you dropped on this episode. So
I love it.
thank you
Thank you
so
so much
much.
for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having you on in the near future. Everybody out there, stay happy, stay well. As usual, I'll drop some of this on LinkedIn, and a lot of good stuff. And thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Bye.